Are you looking to get a head start on first quarter? Here at Change Coaches, we prepare people to lead in today's workplace. And we do that, leadership and organizational coaching, everything ranging from one-on-one executive coaching to group coaching related to certain competencies that you love middle managers to learn. We also offer keynotes, and those keynotes are based on the Leading Below the Surface book. And then finally, our most exciting offering that we just recently launched is empathy-based sales training. So we will get your sales team in a room, be able to develop them, train them, bring in more sales, and also bring you in more connections with customers. To learn more, visit changecoaches.io or email info@changecoaches.io. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leading Below the Surface podcast. I'm your host, LaTonya Wilkins, and today we're going to be digging into an episode that I think all of you will love. Like, all of you are probably going through life changes. Maybe some of those are expected, some of those are unexpected, some of those are chosen, some of those we don't choose. But that's what we're going to be talking about today, are those life changes that are unexpected in our life, whether we choose those or not. So before I get into my guest, who I'm very excited about, let me talk about, again, who is this episode for, what we will provide. So we're going to provide, like I said, we're going to share some stories about some things going on in our lives, those unexpecteds. And then we're going to get into some tools and resources. We're not going to just leave you hanging. We're not going to just put it all out there and you're like, yeah, I'm going through that too. And then we just stop it. We're not going to do that today. And as you see, my guest, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're laughing together. So let me get to that. So our guest today is Sabrina Creighton. I'm really lucky to call her one of our change coaches, one of our partner coaches. In fact, I also refer her, I refer my people to her quite a bit that are looking for a coach, especially people that are looking for a coach for the first time. She's been amazing. Like, people are like, I don't really know what I want. I'm like, you want Sabrina. And so it's been really great to do that. Like, she did some Design Your Life training. She's also she also runs coach communities and has had a long background in corporate leadership development, learning and development. And so, Sabrina, I'm really excited to have you here. What did I miss about you?
You didn't miss anything, LaTonya. Actually, you made me sound a little bit better than I probably really have written myself. But no, I'm just so excited to be here with you and just to talk to you again.
Congratulations on the journal company. I know we've talked about this a couple times, and that's the way to get it, is to have something that's out there and people can always discover you, also helping people in the world. But it's funny because I was in a conversation with you the other day, and you said that this is the best time of your life. Can you say more about that? Because other people are like, oh, like, okay, like I don't hear that all the time. Especially, again, we're in a transition. I call it a transition period. We don't know what's on the other side of the transition. But what makes you say that about your life right now?
Oh, I love that. I think that's a great question. So, I mean, right now I'm working on a passion project that's really close to my heart. I'm working on launching my journal company. And this is really exciting to me because I feel like it's a space where I can combine all of the things I'm good at work, all of the things that I feel like I'm good at in my personal life. And then just, what I offer to my clients, it's all wrapped up in a little bundle in this project. And I'm just super excited about it. I have a lot of energy around it. I have a lot of positive emotions around it. And it just feels like it's coming at a place where I am living my best life. I don't know how I got here, but it's just giving me a lot of energy right now. And so I'm just trying to absorb all of the wonderful things coming at me.
Yeah. Congratulations on the journal company. I know we've talked about this a couple times, and that's the way to get it, is to have something that's out there and people can always discover you, also helping people in the world. But it's funny because I was in a conversation with you the other day, and you said that this is the best time of your life. Can you say more about that? Because other people are like, oh, like, okay, like I don't hear that all the time. Especially, again, we're in a transition. I call it a transition period. We don't know what's on the other side of the transition. But what makes you say that about your life right now?
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because it does feel odd to me sometimes to say, this is the best time of my life. And then I look out the window and it's terrible. I mean, and you know, and that is still occurring. The reason why this is the best time of my life is that because for me personally, it's the first time that I haven't had storms raging inside of me and inside of my life. There's always going to be storms raging outside, but inside of me is a calm nervous system. And this is the first time that I've ever had this. And it's a very odd feeling, but it's a very fulfilling feeling.
Look at you dropping these gems all like you just come in here.
I didn't
look at you come up in here doing this right now. Come on. You know, I love because there are I think I might have shared this on the podcast, but last year I went to a joy retreat. Like a coach I know was having that, and it was like our first time doing it. And I remember before I left, I remembered this post. It wasn't made by her, but it was made by someone in her network. And I ended up connecting with her. But it was like, my joy is not external, it's internal. And I was like, oh, yeah, right there, right there. And that was just a gem. And it's something to keep in mind that that is where your joy is. And like whatever's going on around you, it's about, you know, building that shield or building something to like that protective, even if it's a membrane in like letting some things in, but being selective about what you let in so you can help other people. But yeah, what do you think about that and like how to navigate that?
No, it's a really good analogy. And the first thing that I thought of is my mother was a big Trekkie. She loved Star Trek, and all I saw was like a force field that you were explaining. But no, I think that's super true. I mean, you know, whether it is what I learned as a child growing up in church, or whether it's something that I learned in the corporate workspace, or just by being an adult and having mindful and sweet and caring friends. One of the things that I try to hold fast to is that I cannot take on all of the problems that are external and like bring them into my personal space. Cause I just can't live like that. I can't exist like that. And so just having things that I even learned from, you know, my faith-based, you know, origins, if you call them that, is like, there's always the ability to recognize what is going right for you, to recognize that you have options, even when it seems like you don't have any. And at the end of the day, you have you, and you can create that peace for yourself, even if other people are not able to create, you know, a peaceful environment for you. You've always got yourself. And it took a long time for me to realize that.
I'm kind of in a similar place as you, but it took, so I slip. Like, yeah, I do. And I have my practices to get back on track. But I love that you said Star Trek, because of course, you know, science fiction. Yeah. We got some Black girl nerds here, into the science fiction, but I do, but yeah, you know, it's one of the things that I see a lot of, and this is why I've really, stopped using certain social, is because, well, number one, it just it feels like a distraction, like especially Facebook. It just feels like a big distraction. And then second, it's the doom and gloom, like people that are like, oh my gosh, the world could end and this is a big thing, like, or we're not going to have another election, or this is going to happen. But they go to the really extreme. And, you know, it's funny because I'm like, that could happen. And, you know, I think with Star Trek and people that have seen a lot, I mean, I don't know if I should be saying this, folks. Hopefully it makes you laugh, but I've seen enough science fiction to start thinking about, like, you know, what if that does happen? Like, and I don't know, I read some Lamarado Owens, he talks about us being in an apocalypse, and it's like, so what would you do in that apocalypse? Like, so if you had to accept that, and our lives are going to change, and this is something we're going to be talking about today, what role would you play? And just like getting even more focused of like, what would you do if something happened? Or, you know, even thinking about like the LA fires, like, and seeing how people stepped up for their neighbors instead of like, oh my God, this is all, it's like people stepped up and like it's like, what would you do in a disaster? And so it's like asking yourself those questions of like, what would you do? But like, don't spend too much time on that, but just have that in your head. Right. And those are what we talk about as coaches, as values.
Right. And that's something that it's interesting that you bring it up, because my family and I, we have these conversations all the time, and I don't know what I would do except for the same thing that I do now. Gather my people. Where are my people? Where are my loved ones? And making sure that they're all safe. That's just what I would do. And I don't know what else I would do other than that, but that's the only thing that's really important to me.
I'd love to hear about, let's get into some stories and some things that, like, some shifts that have happened in our lives. I mean, it's funny, like everything, like with us, it's like, it's like every time we talk, I'm like, wait, what? Like, did we like grow up like in parallel universes? Like, what the heck? But let's get into some things in our lives that have been unexpected and how we navigated that. So maybe you could start with maybe the first situation that you'd like to bring to the table.
This last 5 years, these things have made me shift completely as a person. So, my mother had stage 4 cancer. It was a surprise. She got sick in 2019. She passed away in 2020. That was something that it was the greatest, most devastating experience that I've ever had. And I became a completely different person throughout that process. Like I look back and I think about the period of time that my mother got sick and that we were taking care of her, and then my mother passed away. And the person that came out on the other end of that was nowhere near the same person that went into it before. And that was the first time that, albeit devastating and unexpected and painful and emotionally taxing, at the end of the day, the person that I came out of that with was a person that I really loved. Like, when I looked in the mirror after that, after all of that devastation, who I became through it was a person that I could highly value and look in the mirror and feel really proud of, to the point where I just couldn't even remember how I thought or how I was or what I did in certain situations before my mother became ill. And so it was a huge shift for me, because it just completely devastated and destroyed my life. And then on the other end of it, it was like I still came out of it with joy. It was surprising to me, albeit it shouldn't have been unexpected, because my mother, the entire time that she was sick, was always so full of joy. She was just so full of joy, and she was so full of gratitude. And I think that that's what she left me with, is the ability, you know what I'm saying? Like, my mother, not one time in 2 years of being sick, ever said, why me? She actually said the opposite. She said, I was thinking about it. And I said, why not me? Why can't I be a blessing to other people through my illness, through my challenges? Why can't I be a blessing to other people? And maybe it was just watching that woman be joyous every single day to the last day. It's like she left me with the ability to feel joy, even in the most terrible times. And I am just so thankful for that. But it also, I am not the same Sabrina that went into that situation. And it's just very shocking of what a change it caused in me.
I could just hear it in the spirit in your voice of your mom, and like the energy of your mother, like feeling that. And it's interesting that you said you didn't come out the same person. It's almost like, I heard like you're almost like living, like you're a living version of your mother today. Like she kind of channeled that, and now you're kind of continuing that joy.
It does feel that way sometimes, LaTonya. I mean, by default, I look a little bit like her, and I sound a whole lot like her.
You look a lot like her.
I sound like her. Sometimes I imitate her, and it's shocking. I'm like, wait a minute, that sounds like my mother. But no, she just taught me so much. I just never expected to learn all of the things that I did. And so, when I came out of that, I was looking at the world differently. I looked at my job differently. I looked at the people around me differently. I looked at the things I had cared about differently, and let's not forget that was also during a pandemic. My mother died in a pandemic. And so we were already in a place where we had to look at the world completely differently. And in my bubble, in my house, though, we had joy. We had love. We had laughter. And, you know, I, I could never regret going through that. And the person I came out of needed different things, saw things differently, felt things differently. And I'm just super grateful for that experience.
I think it was like a year into knowing you. And I think it was something, I think I posted something on LinkedIn, and I think we realized that we shared this. It's a very small, I don't want to say club, but it is. It's like where people like our age, like they, you know, like when I lost my mom, I think I was younger. I was a lot younger than you, but I was in my 30s. But it was still before we were, I don't want to say supposed to, but it's like nobody understand. Like I still get, what do your parents do? And my parents have passed away, or and then I stopped sharing because then people get, it's like when you share things like this, and this is why we're having this show today. When you share things like this, I think people like project in their like, oh my God, what if that happened to me and I was in my 30s? Like, what would I do? And so that's how they react. And it's like, oh my God. And it's like, wait, I'm at peace. Hold up. Like, don't put that on me. So I stopped sharing because, I mean, I also lost my sister when I was in my early 20s, or sorry, late 20s. And it's like, I'm at peace with that. And it took some time. Like, I think that gave me experience, I guess. Like, but like, so when my mom was passing, like she had heart disease. So I guess I was kind of, I had time to get ready, even though you're never 100% ready. But,
right.
But yeah, I just stopped sharing about that. Like I'll just tell them what my parents were like. And then so I still say I have 4 siblings, and I just kind of move on, and then I'll tell people later. Well, how does that land with you when I say that?
No, it makes sense. I mean, and what you said is 100% true, because when you mentioned your sister, I know that your sister passed, but when you mentioned it just now, inside my spirit, I thought about my own sisters.
Right.
And so like, I can completely, it was like in my gut, and I said, keep it together. Keep it together. And I already knew that, but so yeah, it makes sense. Every time I tell someone that my mother passed, there's like and I'm moving on in the conversation. There's a moment where somebody is giving me their condolences, and I really appreciate that. And, at the same time, I am moving on from it in a way that, like, I feel gratitude. And now it is, when I bring it up, even though it's devastating, it is also the catalyst for all of the other things that I'm doing in my life. And so that's the energy with which I bring it up. It's like, this thing happened to my mother and she left me with resources so that I could go and be fantastic. And so all of the great things that are happening in my life is because my mother helped me get there. And so, but I completely understand how you stop wanting to share because other people are then going to feel those emotions. And they don't know the place that you're in with it unless they've been there with you. Right? Like, unless they've seen you go through it, they know. Like, my closest friends, when I say something about my mother passing, they've been through that journey with me, so they know where I am with it. And other people, they really feel, sympathy for you. And sometimes it's hard for them to hold that back. So yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, I love that you admitted that, because, and I think if people could just like some of you are probably wondering, oh my gosh, what should I say? Maybe you're listening and you did say that to me, or you said that to other people. I think what Sabrina said is an appropriate response of like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I have 3 sisters I'm really close to, like, yeah, like what was like, how is that for you? Or, how has your journey been through this loss? And I think all of that's appropriate. Like, I think what's not the sympathy response and we all know Brene Brown is like one of the people that I think all of us often cite her on sympathy versus empathy, but it's having that empathy and having a conversation that feels stronger and not weaker, because then that's even more triggering. And it's like, but I will say that, before we get to the next story is like, with my losses, and I've talked about, like many of you probably know my story because of Leading Below the Surface and just this podcast. But I do feel like the losses that I've had have forced me to work through my childhood traumas. And I'm still doing that, but it's been quite a incredible journey. And I know the word incredible doesn't always mean like, woo, I'm laying on a beach and like when it's in February, like I leave Chicago and go lay on a hot beach. But it's just all the things that, like kind of what you said, Sabrina, it's like the things that were kind of left open by my mom and others and my ancestors, and the things that were created for me, I can close those things, or I can finish those things, or I can, and just working through the traumas that I had, it still come up. Like what we said, like it's never all or nothing. Like even when we talk about our strategies to navigate the world.
Right. Absolutely. And I love the fact that you said you can close those things, like you can complete those things. And like a lot of times you don't think of it in that way. They left things open. They've started things, and then we get to finish them. We get to, change them into other things. And I see that a lot. Like every time I create something, I'm like, oh, my mother, that's something my mother would have loved. And those, those music notes are in my logo because my mother loved music and she was a singer, or those things, I love these things because my mother loved those things. And now I can continue that on in a different way. Even the fact that I'm creating a journal company is because I have 10 of my mother's journals that I read through whenever I miss her.
Oh, wow.
So, it's like continuing those things.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. You know what I have, and I think now you've just inspired me to go open it again. I have my mother's Bible with her notes, and the notes are because my mom and I had some issues, like obviously because there's a lot that I won't get into that today, but there's things in there around how she felt about things, like certain pieces, especially pieces of me and pieces. And it's beautiful to see her, because when you're with your parents, you're like, whatever, they don't get me. But then you see like this beautiful struggle of like, faith, like what you think you're supposed to do, what loving your kids really looks like, what acceptance really looks like. And I've seen that in other relatives. It's beautiful. Can I tell you how beautiful that is to see, like, just to see my grandma, like from, the time that I knew I was different. My grandma always knew, and then just seeing like how everybody just comes along and then they say things and you're like, wait, are you talking to me?
First of all, your grandma knows you, baby. The grandmama knows you. Okay.
I know, isn't that nutty?
But no, yeah.
No, I don't understand.
They just know. It's because they just carry you in their heart, LaTonya, and it's, and even when you speak about like your mom's Bible, like I've had the experience of looking through my mother's journals and the things that she's written, and one, clarifying how much she loved us from the times that she's thinking about us driving someplace and she's journaling about that. But two, that my mother was who she said she was. My mother said she was, she walked through the world as something. And in her private moments, in her journals, she was that same person. I found prayer lists of my friends' names in my mother's book, my friends' names in my mother's books, right? But then also to the point of what you said about parents, my mother's journals particularly have helped me to parent my adult child better. because there is an understanding that I could get through reading what my mother wrote when she was my age and recognizing now at 48 that she was a human being. You know, that time where you realize that your mom is a person?
Yeah.
You know, like everybody goes through that where they're like, oh, wait, she's a person. She's a real human, right? And so that has allowed me to be more vulnerable with my child.
Yeah.
My mother never told me, look, sis, I'm a human being. I'm going through my own stuff. My mother never communicated that to me. So now reading that, I'm like, oh my God, my mother was this whole person. And I think about all of the stuff I was doing. I'm looking at these dates and I was like, I remember what I was just out in the world shenanigating. And my mother was over here being a real human. And so I started parenting my child differently. My adult child, I tell her about my humanity. I tell her when I'm struggling. I tell her that I can't deal with what she's offering me right now because I am going through something. And I want her to recognize when, you know, that mom is a human too. And I want her to experience the growth that I experienced, but I don't want her to do it at 45 when I started reading my mother's journals. I want her to do that at 25. You know, because it's been incredibly enlightening for me. And it's helped me to be a more whole human by understanding who my mother was.
Yeah, you know, it's like when you're growing up, it's like you think your parents should be perfect and the world, like there's a lot I'm doing with my father right now. And I went back to my hometown recently again, and we had this group of people that were like our elders, and we call them cousins, aunts, and uncles, but they're not for real, but they are. But, you know, I just, as I meet with those, like a lot of those folks have grown old. And when I meet them, they still have so much wisdom. And when I see them, it's like, then I realize how hard their lives were and how how human they are. Like my dad working in a meat packing plant to support his children. And, you know, this is like kind of where I'm at right now on this journey is like, now I'm on my dad and like just understanding what that was like and what that looked like. And, just being able to talk to siblings, but yeah. So folks, last one, I think to wrap this one up, Sabrina, I think I love like what you're saying about being human and reading like journals and things that, people have left behind. Is there anything else that you would say before we wrap up and this gets to the next life situation?
No, to just plus one on what you said about your dad. I realized when you said that I'm doing the exact same thing with my father. And that's just another blessing. So I'm glad that you brought that up to remind me that that's what I'm doing.
It's amazing how these doors are open. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like when you're like, I guess the example I'll give is like when I was younger and I think the first time I ever saw a therapist, I was probably in my late 20s. And I remember I was like, I'm going to go for 1 year. And then all this stuff happened. And then I ended up going back and back. But it's like, if you only go for 1 year, you're just getting started. And I would get mad at people when they'd say this to me, because it's like, you got to get one step deeper to go 10 steps deeper. Right. It's like kind of like if you're someone, like, I guess a metaphor I can use is like, if you're like a programmer, like you program computers, like first you have to get to the basic language. And then it opens up a world of, oh, I'm going to create some product. Oh, that product's going to be deep. But it's like, that is so important. I used to get mad. Can I tell you how mad I get at people when they're like, I don't think that's enough time. I'm like, you don't know me, right?
No, you don't know you.
I love that.
No, you don't know you.
Yeah.
No, like, and the funny thing about therapy too is that you could be going to therapy and you think you solved the problem, and then you think you have another problem, and you might go back to therapy. That's the same problem.
Right. You just haven't unraveled the whole thing, right? So. Yeah.
No, I've been in therapy for 5 straight years, and I'm working on the same problem presenting itself as 20 different things.
It's just evolved and morphed into something else. Mm-hmm. So what's another situation we can talk about today to that people might be dealing with?
Yeah. I mean, in 2024, I had a surprise divorce. I know a lot of people are going through divorces. And in 2020, this time last year, I never would have thought I'd be divorced. Like just a year ago, I had no idea that I would be divorced. And in 2024, I ended up finding out I was getting divorced and then going through that divorce and completing that divorce. And that completely turned my life upside down in the best way. This is a thought that I had throughout the process that I reframed. And I think that sums it up. Throughout this process of my divorce, I thought to myself, there are going to be a lot of things that are broken in my life that I'm going to have to fix. And I thought that, I was going to rise from a phoenix, like a phoenix from the ashes and fix all of these things. And that was going to be the great thing about that. And I learned that I needed to reframe that, because actually what divorce did for me was it gave me a clean blank slate with which to create a life that was filled with the things that I valued and the things that I wanted. And I realized that even though at the outset it seemed like a lot of things were being destroyed in my life, what I found actually going through them is that a lot of things were being created in my life. And they were things that I cared about, things that were in alignment with my values, things that made my nervous system really calm, things that made me smile. And at the beginning, I never would have thought that at the end, this would actually be the best thing that could ever have happened to me at this stage in my life.
It's interesting, those things that you're talking about, that those doors opening. Do you think those were just latent when you were married, or or were they blocked by your marriage, or was it what was that? Because it sounds like almost like there was a release of. It's like, I'm thinking of my ice making machine in my, sorry folks, I'm telling you, this gets better. But, in your fridge, and when you hear the ice break up, and it's like, was there some sort of movements of maybe there was something clogged and then it just broke up there?
I think it was, first of all, it's a great metaphor, but, cause I could hear it in my head.
Right.
But no, I think for me, I likened it to the bookshelf that's behind you. I had this room, and I just started putting furniture in it with other people's things on it. And I had, this big bookshelf, and I was putting little tchotchkes on this bookshelf that were important to other people. And I put all the books and all of the things and all of the projects that were important to other people, because I wanted to show them that I cared about those things. And I created this really amazing display on the wall, up against the wall. And then what it was like is that somebody came in and just knocked that whole bookshelf over. And then I realized that there was a door behind it. That's how it feels.
Oh my, look at you.
You know what I'm saying? I just had this room, and I said, this is a great room. Let me put all this really nice stuff in it.
The wardrobe. Remember we were kids, and I love
yes,
that movie. Of course
yes,
you did too.
You walk past, and it's a whole other world.
And there's doors everywhere.
Yes, that's what it was like. It kind of was like, wow, Sabrina, you set up all of this really nice thing for other people. You set up all of these really nice things for other people. You gave other people launch parties. You did vacations for other people. And then when they come through and they knock everything down, when the dust settles, you realize that there was something for you that you didn't even pay attention to. And I think that that's exactly what happened. Is I realized that although I thought I was growing, there were things that I was doing for other people that stopped me from realizing my true potential, because I was too busy worried about how they would receive what I was doing for them.
And I think your story is I think you have some different, some nuances, I guess. That's probably not the word I really want to use, but hearing your story, I hear this from so many people that have children and are married, and they are oh my gosh, like, what do we do? Like when the kids get older and like, have I been taking care of myself? Cause I know you're probably the person that is the main parent, like, like you're into your, supporting like your kids. And so you get to that and you're like, wait, like what's important to me? And, I think that maybe you were doing that and some of you may be doing that, but like, I think it's like, I love like the door open, like it's almost like the door was cracked, but it was like ripped open. It was like ripped off the hinges because you're like, wait, let me get this out of my way. This is not working for me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's so funny, LaTonya. I can tell you that every single time I meet someone who is having a child or who's getting married and they ask me for advice or I write a card for them, the one thing that I write in there is don't lose yourself. Just, this is a wonderful time. Do not lose you. And then I walked into a situation and I lost myself. And I didn't realize I lost myself because I was doing things for myself. Sure, I got all these degrees. Sure, I got this great job. Sure, I started my coaching practice. But there was a whole other layer of me that wasn't getting the attention because I was giving that attention to other people. Now, I'm not saying that, I regret giving attention to my children. Absolutely no. My child, my stepchildren, they're a top priority. But there was a point at where I was just giving to be giving, just to be liked, just to be loved, just giving to be giving to be giving. And then I'm sitting in the house alone, not giving to my own self because your children are going to leave. Your children, you're going to raise them and they're going to leave or they're going to not be there. And what you have left are the things that you've given to yourself. And so if your children are gone and, your stepkids have gone home to their mom and your daughter has actually moved out and you're sitting in an empty room, those are the things that you prepared for yourself. And what I found was that it wasn't much.
I love that. Like, don't lose yourself because I see that a lot. I think about that a lot as a coach. Like when people are having children and they're very skeptical or they're like, there's so many things like I see them and then they're doing all these amazing things and they have a kid and then it's like, and I think you could do both. It's just like what you said. It's like, make sure that you're seeking out and balancing. And I think for me, as you know, and I won't get too much into this today, but I also had like a situation last year where I went through an unexpected separation as well, romantic separation. And it wasn't what I thought would happen. And at the end of the day, it was just the difference in values and needs and just energies, like in general. And it's really hard to grapple with that. And I won't get too deep. I think Sabrina got deep enough for us. But what I'll talk about is, and Sabrina, we could kind of end on this one. But I picked up. So I've been having so many changes in my life with people, and this has been very challenging for me. I don't talk about this on Leading Below the Surface, the podcast, a lot. So this is a personal episode, but it's people that have been friends of mine. It's people that have worked for change coaches. It's people, again, my romantic relationship. So I thought everything was kind of crashing down. And then I read the book, Necessary Endings. And I've done some other things, but let's get into some resources, Sabrina. But I read that in one of my former coaches encouraged it. I'll let you know, folks, it is a little written by a male masculine perspective. Like a lot of the examples are older white men, which is fine. And it's kind of, I don't know when the book was written, but some of the examples are dated, but they're good. But I think last year, like when you're talking about, seasons of relationships, and it was like one of my best friends sent me this, cause she knows I've been going through this, but she sent me this, metaphor that, people in your life are like trees. Like you get roots, like some people are the roots, some are the branches. And I think this is Tyler Perry originally. Some are the branches and then some are leaves, and the leaves just fall off. the branches are kind of in the middle, but the roots those are kind of your ride or dies, right? And she was like, you're a root. And it was so beautiful. It was like, oh my God, I love this, because it makes you really like start to see that some things end and there's seasons. And I made a mistake in the early days of running my business, because I came from a talent management background, and it was like, in leadership development, it was like retention was like a big measure. And so I was like, oh my gosh, am I not able to retain my employees? But it's like, that is not right. Like, it's not long. I even read Conscious Uncoupling. It's like, I don't know why we think this longevity is not like, yeah, you're going to have some roots, but it was like, he talks about like rose bushes, and like, you have to prune them. And like, I have a table full of plants in the living room, and it's like, every day I have to, maybe every week I have to prune them and make sure they're doing, and otherwise, if I leave the dead pieces on, it's either going to die, the whole plant will die, or it's going to rot, or it's going to grow more slowly. But if I make the decision to like one plant, I had to like get help with, and I had to cut half the plant. And it was a plant for my mom's funeral. So I was like really, really sensitive about it. And I had to get rid of most of the plant, but it's thriving today. Right. And it's like, gosh, it was so sad to see it bare, but now it's huge. And so yeah, what do you think of that, Sabrina? And like any tools or resources that you would offer?
That, first of all, it's a fantastic analogy. And all I could think of when you were talking about it is like, if you don't prune those things, your tree is going to get overwhelmed. Those things are going to kill your tree. And if you don't take care of the roots, if you don't water the roots and make sure that the ground is right, like, your tree is going to die. And it's going to fall over. And, like we have to really take care of the things that are going to sustain us. We cannot ignore those things at the risk of something that's temporary.
Temporary.
So, absolutely. I mean, My godfather says, and maybe he'll watch this podcast because I'm going to send it to him. But my godfather gave me some information that I carry from my life. And he said, do not be afraid to lose the things that you cannot keep, to keep the things that you cannot afford to lose. And that's that pruning, right? Sometimes you have to prune things or else it will kill your tree. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's a great metaphor. And when I think about the ways that, when I think about pruning, right, there's a lot of different resources that I think about. And sometimes you have to prune your community. Yes. Like, I'm a big person on community. I'm a big person on family. And sometimes you have to prune some pieces of that are taking away from the greater good, I guess I'll say. Like in community, everybody can't be with you forever. Everybody, what they say is a season, a reason, a lifetime, which goes along with that tree. Everybody can't be a root. I know. And when you realize, everybody can't be a root. Everybody can't be a branch, sis. Like, you have to prune things off of your tree before they destroy other stuff. And that's how I am with my community as well. Like, I can't have people in my circle. I can't have people in my space that are killing my tree. Right. I just can't have it. I cannot have it. And so, like, my community, my family primarily, but my community of people, including people like you, that's the only way I've gotten through some of these things, to be able to see the joy on the other end. Right. Like, when my mother passed away, I almost had a complete mental breakdown. My family lived in my house for about 3 weeks. My sisters, like, there were 10 people in my house, and I don't know what I would have done if they weren't there. When I got divorced last year, my entire community just loved on me. Yeah. In the times where it was super rough, you know what I'm saying? Just loved on me. My sisters, my cousins, my colleagues. And then from that love, it was like a bridge. Right. Like, there's devastation and sorrow, and then there's the other end, and oh my God, this is amazing. They were the bridge. So, like, my community is super important to me, to be able to just see that this life is possible, to like get to this point where I can say, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing part of my life. It's that. It's also therapy. We mentioned therapy. I've been in therapy for 5 straight years. I've had 2 wonderful therapists, one to get me through all of the stuff that came with my mother's illness and her death and who I was on the other end. And I have a therapist that I've had since probably like the last 8 months that literally carried me through the first few weeks of my divorce, you know? And so that's just super important. And then even, you know, you were talking about resources and things like that. I specialize in life design with my clients. I actually do that stuff. When my mother passed away, I redesigned my life. And now I'm in the process again of redesigning my life, because it's all about, we talked about empathy, empathizing with yourself and understanding who you are, where you are, what's valuable, what you want is important to be able to move forward. And so like using that process, I was able to see Sabrina and see what was valuable for Sabrina, and then use that information to move forward and to try new things. And so I'm always empathizing with myself and trying to, you know, understand what's going on for me. But I'm also in a big prototyping phase. I'm just trying stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying stuff, right? I had dinner with strangers. I'm on a podcast. I'm starting a new, you know, I'm doing things. I'm going outside. It's just prototyping a whole new existence, right? But at the end of the day, what my mother would have said is, you remember who you are. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You are Sabrina. You have so much to offer. And nobody is going to hold you back from that. And like, I live in that every day, because I'm really grateful to be here. I'm grateful that I've been through the things that I've been through. And I'm grateful that I can be some type of a light for somebody else that is going through something.
My heart was just warm through everything you're talking about there. Like, and I was chuckling because you used the design thinking, like empathizing with myself. But that's important, because again, it's like a rinse and repeat. Like, oh, I got to empathize with myself. Oh my gosh. Like we were talking about, sometimes you go outside the lanes and you're like, ooh, or if you go off the rails and you're like, whoa. And so you got to come back. And that's the way to come back, is to continue to design. And, the other thing you said were, the roots of your life getting you through. And I just wanted to say, gosh, you know, when you spend your time pruning and you could focus 80% of your time on your roots, God, doesn't your life really change? Like it's really hard to do, because, you know, I felt guilty and I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's like when you really focus on those roots, and yeah, the branches too, the branches are like, hey, let's go do this together, or let's go have an activity. But those roots, when you focus on, I mean, some of my roots are like, you know, way older than me, like really great wisdom, 60s, 70s. And I have younger roots and older roots. And like, I learned so much from them. And so just being able, but I'm not usually into pop psychology, but I did like the book, Let Them. And I'm not usually into that. So I'm like, I'm not a pop psychology kind of person, but I thought that book came right at the right time of like, when you're pruning, like I needed to hear and you prune someone, and again, they could come back. Like, it's like what she says, like there's a great scattering of friends, and like, let them be who they are, and then let the relationship evolve. And sometimes they'll come back and sometimes they won't. But like you said, you're always redesigning, and the universe is always shifting. And so you never know.
I mean, you never know with some leaves. Some leaves, you know. Some leaves I gotta, right. Absolutely. No, but like we bonded over that book, right? At the end of the day, all of the stuff we talk about with our colleagues is the pop psychology. Like, it's always super valuable, you know, yeah, it was pretty poppy. It was, you know, one of the things about like empathizing. Oh, I don't know about that, but like, one of the things that I recognize in empathizing with myself is just things that I can vibe with, right? And that's why I read the Let Them Theory book, because I found myself in the car, just listening to Mel Robbins' podcast and talking out loud to myself, right? Like, that's what got my attention. I was in the car like, wait a minute, that's how I feel. And oh, that's a good, oh, I wish I could write this down, but I'm driving. And oh my gosh, that was really resonant for me. And it left me then sitting in my apartment thinking about those things and like processing them further. Like, how do I feel about that? One of the things that even just reading through that book has allowed me to do is to incorporate some of those practices into how I talk to myself when I'm by myself, right? No, just let them do that. Like, let them do that. And then I'm going to be over here and this is what I'm going to do for me, right? Or just even thinking about how I feel about things and what belongs in my life and what doesn't. I know it's been like the catalyst just for me to ask myself different questions. Right. And like that empathy for yourself, it's not just saying, oh, you deserve to, it's okay that you feel bad. No, it's like having that empathy to where you see the circumstances that you're going through and where you can help to walk yourself out of them. Right. And, towards something that's going to be really valuable for you.
I actually listened to the book in my car quite a bit. Like I got stuck in Indiana for this event. And so I listened to it and it was really, really good. But anyways, so we went over, folks. So hopefully you really liked this podcast. And if you heard something that resonated with you, please share it with other people. I think they'll love it. They'll love that you shared that with this with them. And Sabrina, how can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Sabrina Creighton, also Sabrina Creighton LLC. That's my coaching company, and they'll be able to find me at Pen and Purpose Journals in the next 30 days. I'm super excited about that launch. But you can go to sabrinacreighton.com to know more about me or connect with me on LinkedIn, and just super excited to just help other people navigate different spaces and to share what I have to offer.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And we will see you next time. And again, if you love this episode, please share it with others and also rate us on your favorite podcast app.